Everyone's been saying for a while that California is collapsing. People are leaving, companies were leaving, money is leaving the state because of that big wealth tax. So logically, if all of that is true and holds up, home prices should be coming down and inventory should be increasing, right? Well, no, that's not exactly what's happening. In fact, something completely abnormal is happening instead. People are leaving, but they're not selling. Inventory is still tight. Prices are not crashing. In fact, they're doing the opposite. And if you don't understand why, you're going to miss out on one of the biggest opportunities in this California housing market. Let's first get into the narrative versus reality gap. But before I do that, my name is Arjun Dhingra. I've been in the mortgage industry for 25 years, most of those right here in the California Bay Area. I have helped thousands of families, me and my team have helped thousands of families through the home buying process and being much smarter when it comes to taking out mortgage debt. And if we can be of help to you in any way, shape, or form, we'd be honored. So please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at Arjun Mortgage. I answer all of my DMs. And again, we'd be really honored and happy to help you in any way that we can. So let's get into today's topic. And let's first start with what everybody thinks is happening. The narrative at this point is everyone's leaving California. There's plenty of articles to support that. The market is about to collapse and that demand is disappearing. That's what the headlines are pushing, and that's what social media continues to repeat. And look, there is some truth to it. There was a bit of an exodus during COVID. Domestic migration in general has been negative. California is actually leading the country when it comes to this. But here's what all of that data leaves out. International migration is actually increasing. The population is stabilizing, and in fact, in some areas actually growing. And the pandemic outflow was an anomaly, not a trend. And a lot of it has reversed course with many of those people that left the state actually coming back. So what we're seeing is not a collapse, it's a bit more of a reset. Okay, so that's the narrative and a little bit of the reality. And let's get into now why this market is not making any sense, why everyone is scratching their head when it comes to thinking about the California housing market. And this is where it's gonna get a little weird, guys. Because if you just followed basic economics, Econ 101, this market should be correcting hardcore. Normally, if people leave, you get a rise in inventory. And if rates go up, which they did, then demand drops. And if affordability drops, prices come down. This has been the case in just about every housing cycle around the country and previously here in California. But right now, none of that is actually happening cleanly. Instead, inventory is only slightly rising. Some homes sit in some parts of the state and others sell instantly. And overall, prices are holding much stronger than originally expected. So if this market is not behaving the way it's supposed to, the real question becomes, what's actually happening underneath the surface? And so we get into the part that very few people understand, which is the real reason why inventory is not rising. For starters, guys, people are leaving, but they're just not selling. This is the largest disconnect when it comes to the data. People are moving to Texas, to Florida, Arizona, but they're keeping their California homes. Why? They're renting them out. They're keeping them also as legitimate second homes because they want to come back from time to time. And they're also using tax strategies. And let's be honest, guys, these are not people that have to sell. They just have money to hold. So the result of all of this behavior is that not a lot of inventory actually ends up hitting the market. So you still have rising demand, fewer and fewer homes actually hitting the market, and that's just going to put upward pressure on prices. Then there's the hidden third market, because everybody talks about a split market between hot homes and stale homes, but there's actually a third layer, and that is the homes that never truly hit the market. The reason is they get passed down through inheritance. They're held long-term, and they're protected by tax advantages like Prop 13. So families get to inherit the property and keep the low property tax basis. So again, no real reason to sell. So as a result of all of this, guys, supply is quietly shrinking in the background. There's also a structural shortage, which is still here in California, and it has to do with building homes. We've underbuilt housing for decades. Now, part of that is due to the fact that after the market crash of '08, a lot of builders became very gun shy. They were never going to overbuild again, because they didn't want to be caught holding the bag like they were during that market crash and massive correction. But if you look at California, it's still a global destination, still a huge job hub, and it's a lifestyle magnet. So demand didn't actually disappear. Now, all of this talk with supply and hidden inventory and people leaving the state but never putting their homes on the market, there is a little bit of an uptick in supply, and I don't want you to think it's completely frozen or gridlocked, but it's only happening slowly and certainly not enough to keep up with demand. And this is in part due to a new trend which has been kind of fun and exciting, and that's ADUs. They're being built, and there is some new construction that's coming online, but it's all incremental. And again, not enough to offset the actual demand. Nationally, this is a big problem, but here in California specifically, it's a major issue. So if we have three markets, then what does this all create? You got hot homes that are selling fast, overpriced homes which are sitting, and invisible inventory which never actually gets listed. Now here's why this creates an incredibly rare opportunity for you. And this is the punchline, guys. So I hope you followed this far. And this is where it all flips, because most people hear all of what I just said and they think that this all sounds very risky. But smart buyers hear this and they think, I hear opportunity. This is one of the first windows where there is true leverage. Because for the first time in years, guys, there's less competition in certain segments of the markets, not all, but certain. Sellers are a lot more flexible and willing to negotiate, finally, after all those years, and deals actually exist again. So I mentioned negotiation because it's back in a big way. Now, this was a forbidden word from the home buying and home selling vocabulary during the COVID market. We are seeing things that we haven't seen in a long time. Credits being given for rate buy downs, closing cost credits, sales price reductions. And again, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, forget it. If you came with even such language in your offer, it was ripped up and thrown out. And also, guys, let's not overcomplicate this. The long-term fundamentals are still very strong. California has technology, entertainment, innovation, lots of capital, some of the best higher learning institutions in the world, and serious high-income earners. So that demand pipeline is still very much intact. So the biggest opportunity for you in all of this is, in fact, that narrative gap. That's the real edge, because public sentiment is starting to turn negative, but the fundamentals are not collapsing. And whenever you see that, you have an intersection of opportunity. Again, negative public sentiment, but strong fundamentals on the other side. And you can apply that rationale to any market, because that gap right there, guys, is where the real money is made. Just remember that when perception and reality disconnect, opportunity shows up. So we talked about the big opportunity here in this market, but let's also talk about the strategy that most people are missing, because this is where most buyers think too small. Now, listen closely here, guys, because your first property does not have to be the property that you live in. Let me say that again. Ownership does not mean actually living in it. You can enter the market and build equity by simply buying a rental property. Now, there are a lot of smart people here in the Bay Area that have a very good rent situation, and quite honestly, don't want to deal with a lot of the responsibilities that come with home ownership if they were to live there. But being a landlord or having a property manager look after a place for them, not a problem at all. And so it's the best of both worlds. You get to keep your cheap rent, keep your responsibilities down, but now you are on the property ladder. You own a real hard asset, which is a difficult thing to do here in California. But when you do it finally, it should be celebrated, because that asset's going to be worth a lot more money over the course of your time of owning it. You're going to have some tax benefits to it, and the debt's going to be paid down by a tenant. What more can you ask for? And you don't have to overextend yourself in a high cost area. Now, this is really becoming more and more applicable, and I've done a lot of short form content on Instagram about this very topic, where it's making more sense for people to do this, because home ownership for the individual or the young couple is sometimes getting out of reach. When they look at where they're living and what they have with the rent they pay now, sure, they're paying their landlord's mortgage, but for them to get something that's remotely comparable in terms of the lifestyle, the size, the flexibility, the comfort in where they're living now, they're gonna have to spend a lot more money. So is it worth it to do that? Or perhaps invest the difference. Or, as we're talking about right here, invest it into a rental property. Let's talk about where all of this is actually playing out here in the state of California, because it isn't happening evenly. You got the coastal versus inland split. In the coastal markets, you have softer demands and more opportunity. Inland, there's more affordability and continued growth. Now, there is the exodus discount areas, some markets that have negative sentiment but strong fundamentals. That disconnect, again, we talked about it, is where opportunity lies. And rental demand, guys, is surging. California is one of the more expensive places to rent, and that's not slowing down anytime soon. With all of the hiring and job creation that's going on, some really big and even head-scratching salaries are being paid out. So what happens to a lot of those people that take those jobs? They sign a lease without really negotiating, and they don't even really care. And when you have that kind of demand and that much money being thrown at the rental market, it just continues to climb higher and higher. And a lot of people prefer to rent for a while before actually buying, either because they feel priced out of ownership or they just don't want the responsibility right now. So rentals are getting stronger. And that's why I said, if you're buying a property, it doesn't have to be the one that you live in. You might want to buy it as an investment, because there's going to be plenty of market out there in terms of people that'll have their hand in the air wanting to rent what you buy. So what does this all mean for you? And what do you actually do with all of this information here from this video? Number one, for starters, do not buy at your max that you've been approved for. Just because you've been approved for X does not mean that you should buy at X. Stay below your ceiling and avoid becoming house poor, which is a big trap here in California. Next is look at your full financial picture, not just your mortgage. Look at insurance costs, which have been rising. Look at the price of fuel for transportation, like gas, and look at your overall cost of living. What's your lifestyle like? Do you like to go out to eat 3-4 nights a week? Take into account all of these expenses. Job stability, guys, also matters more than ever. A lot of people are exposed to volatile industries where one day things are going to look incredible and euphoric and optimistic and the sky's the limit, and then the sky can come crashing down the next month. So it's very complicated and you want to be careful here. But make sure you're taking some stock and get real good understanding and comfort levels around what your job prospects look like in the near and long term. And lastly, guys, you need to understand the rate cycle. Rates are not random. If you know what actually drives rates, then you can monitor this yourself. And if you follow this channel or you follow any of my short form content, then you know, because this is what I teach. When you have oil spikes, rates go up. When oil prices cool, so too do mortgage rates. So this is just a cycle. It's nothing permanent. So in closing, guys, I'll tell you that everyone's focused on the headline that people are leaving California. California sucks. And yes, the state has its challenges and it's going to continue to have challenges. When you have this many people living in a state and you have all kinds of conflicting leadership styles that are in and out of office, you're going to have a little bit of chaos. But the real story is that people are not just leaving. They're leaving without selling. They're leaving without releasing inventory. They're leaving with the intent to come back sometimes, all the time, maybe even full time. And they're doing this without breaking demand at all, which is why this market has been such a head scratcher, why it remains expensive. And if you own something here, why that asset you own is going to continue to do well over time. So again, guys, this market is not crashing by any means. It's actually just shifting. And if you understand this shift, then you are operating at a level that most buyers will actually miss. So if you're watching this video and thinking, okay, but what should I actually do right now? That's exactly what me and my team help everyone figure out every day. So just reach out to me again at Arjun Mortgage on Instagram. I'll help you map out a strategy based on your income, your long-term plans, your job prospects, and together we can figure out where this market is actually heading as it pertains to you. So I hope you found this video useful today, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next topic.